Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome to the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. We would like to thank Jim for today's topic. Today, we're diving into a pivotal moment in labor history, the Haymarket Massacre. It's a story of struggle, conflict, and the quest for workers' rights.
That's right, Marco. This event didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of mounting tensions in a rapidly industrializing world. Before diving into the Haymarket Massacre, let's paint a broader picture of the world at that time. We're looking at the late 19th century, a period of monumental change globally.
Exactly, Chuck. The world was in the throes of the Second Industrial Revolution. This era brought dramatic advancements in technology and industry. Railroads were expanding, factories were booming, and cities were growing rapidly.
And with these changes came a shift in the workforce. Millions of people moved from rural areas to cities, seeking work in these burgeoning industries. But the promise of a better life in the city was often a harsh reality check.
You're right, Chuck. Workers faced incredibly harsh conditions. We're talking about 12 to 16-hour workdays, meager wages, and hazardous work environments. Child labor was rampant, and workplace injuries were distressingly common.
In this backdrop, there was a growing sense of unrest among the working class. Labor unions started to form, pushing back against the exploitative practices of employers. There was a growing cry for better working conditions, fair pay, and more humane hours.
And this is where our story begins to take shape. Amidst this landscape of industrial might and worker misery, the labor movement started gaining momentum, particularly in cities like Chicago, which was a hotbed for labor activism and radical ideas.
That's right, Marco. Chicago in the 1880s was not just a booming industrial city. It was also a melting pot of cultures and ideas, with a significant immigrant population. These diverse groups brought different perspectives and experiences, contributing to the city's vibrant, albeit tense, atmosphere.
This tension set the stage for what was to come at Haymarket Square, a pivotal moment that emerged from the heart of a struggling, vibrant, and rapidly changing society. To truly understand the Haymarket Massacre, we need to delve into the events leading up to it. The year 1886 was a tipping point in labor history.
You're spot on, Marco. The labor movement had been building momentum for years, but it was in 1886 that things really started to heat up. Central to this was the fight for an 8-hour workday, which had become a rallying cry for workers across the United States.
This demand wasn't just about shorter hours, it was about human dignity, fair labor practices, and a better quality of life. The slogan 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will encapsulated this movement.
The center of this struggle was Chicago, a major industrial hub with a large and diverse workforce. Here, labor unions, anarchists, socialists, and ordinary workers came together in an unprecedented show of solidarity.
On May 1, 1886, a nationwide strike was called with a demand for an 8-hour workday. Over 300,000 workers across the country walked off their jobs in what was an incredible display of organized labor.
In Chicago, the response was massive. Nearly 40,000 workers joined the strike, effectively bringing the city's industry to a standstill. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a sense of purpose and possibility.
But it wasn't all peaceful. Tensions between workers and employers, often backed by the police, were escalating. There were instances of violence, with strikers clashing with the police, who were seen as protectors of the industrialists' interests.
And it's against this backdrop of hope, tension, and struggle that we come to May 3rd. A confrontation outside the McCormick Reaper Works turned violent, with police opening fire on striking workers, resulting in several deaths.
This tragic incident inflamed passions further and set the stage for what was to come at Haymarket Square. What had started as a movement for labor rights was about to collide head-on with the forces of law and order, with consequences that would echo through history. The Haymarket Affair, a pivotal moment in labor history, unfolded over the tense days following the McCormick Reaper Works incident. On May 4, 1886, labor activists organized a rally at Haymarket Square, aimed at protesting police brutality and continuing the push for an 8-hour workday.
That's right, Marco. The rally was meant to be peaceful, attracting a diverse crowd of workers, their families, and activists. Notable figures in the labor movement, like August Spies and Samuel Fielden, were among the speakers. The crowd, estimated at several thousand, was a mix of laborers, reformers, and curious onlookers.
As the evening progressed, the gathering remained calm and orderly. Mayor Carter Harrison Sr., who attended the event, even remarked on its peaceful nature before leaving. But as the rally was winding down, with only a few hundred people remaining, the atmosphere dramatically shifted.
Yes, Marco. The turning point came when a large contingent of police arrived to disperse the remaining crowd. It was then that an unidentified individual threw a bomb into the ranks of the advancing police.
The explosion was devastating. It instantly killed one police officer and injured several others. In the chaos that ensued, the police opened fire, leading to a tragic and violent confrontation.
The exact number of casualties among the demonstrators remains unclear due to the chaos, but estimates suggest several were killed and many more wounded. The police suffered heavy losses too, with numerous officers injured and several fatalities.
The Haymarket Affair quickly became a national and international news story. It was seen as a symbol of the growing conflict between labor and capital, between the working class and the establishment.
In the aftermath, the public's reaction was mixed. While some sympathized with the labor movement, others were swayed by the press, which largely portrayed the event as an act of anarchist terrorism.
This event wasn't just a tragedy, it became a watershed moment in the history of the labor movement, shaping public opinion, law enforcement practices, and labor policies for years to come. In the midst of the Haymarket tragedy, there were figures who emerged as heroes, symbols of the labor movement's struggle and resilience.
That's right, Marco. These individuals weren't just leaders, they were emblematic of the broader fight for workers' rights. August Spies, Albert Parsons, and Samuel Fielden were among the most prominent figures. They were known for their passionate advocacy for labor rights and their eloquent, inspiring speeches.
Spies, an immigrant and editor of the Arbeiterzeitung, a workers' newspaper, was a particularly influential voice. His writings and speeches rallied workers around the cause of fair labor practices, igniting a sense of unity and purpose among the diverse working class.
Albert Parsons, another key figure, was an articulate orator and a tireless activist. His background as a Confederate soldier turned labor leader symbolized a transformation that resonated with many workers who had seen the harsh realities of industrial labor.
Samuel Fielden, an English-born laborer, brought a perspective shaped by his own experiences in the textile mills. His journey from a worker to a leading voice in the labor movement was an inspiration to many.
These leaders, and others like them, weren't just fighting for a cause, they were fighting for the fundamental rights of workers. Their resistance took various forms, from organizing strikes and rallies to publishing articles that challenged the status quo.
Their heroism lay in their unwavering commitment to their beliefs, even in the face of intense opposition and, ultimately, persecution. Following the Haymarket Affair, they were arrested and subjected to a controversial trial that was widely criticized for its lack of fairness.
The trial itself became a rallying point, symbolizing the struggle between labor and authority. The harsh sentences handed down to these leaders, including death sentences for some, sparked international protests and became a cause célèbre in the labor movement.
The legacy of these leaders, their courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and their dedication to the cause of labor rights, continue to inspire movements for social and economic justice to this day. Their story is a powerful reminder of the impact that a few committed individuals can have in the fight for a fairer world.
The aftermath of the Haymarket Affair was a complex and turbulent period, marked by a nationwide reaction that shaped the future of the labor movement and civil liberties in America.
In the immediate wake of the bombing and the subsequent violence, public opinion was sharply divided. Many in the mainstream media and the public viewed the events at Haymarket as an act of terrorism linked to the anarchist movement.
This perception led to a widespread crackdown on labor organizations and activists. The authorities conducted raids and arrests, targeting not only those directly involved in the rally but also broader segments of the labor movement.
The legal proceedings that followed were highly controversial. 8 men, predominantly anarchists and labor leaders, were put on trial for the bombing, despite the lack of clear evidence linking them directly to the act.
The trial was criticized for its legal irregularities and perceived bias against the defendants. The judge's predisposition, the selection of the jury, and the overall conduct of the trial were seen by many as indicative of a miscarriage of justice.
In a verdict that shocked many, 7 of the 8 defendants were sentenced to death, and 1 to a long prison term. The sentences sparked outrage and protests both nationally and internationally, becoming a focal point for labor rights advocacy.
The execution of 4 of the defendants, August Spies, Albert Parsons, George Engel, and Adolf Fischer, turned them into martyrs for the labor movement. Their last words and letters, particularly those of Spies and Parsons, were widely circulated, fueling the fire of labor activism.
2 others, Michael Schwab and Samuel Fielden, had their death sentences commuted to life in prison by the governor, while Oscar Neebe received a 15-year sentence. The 8th defendant, Louis Ling, died in his cell under mysterious circumstances, which many believed to be suicide.
The Haymarket Affair had a lasting impact on the labor movement. While it initially set back the struggle for the 8-hour workday and workers' rights, it also galvanized the movement, leading to a more organized and strategic approach to labor activism.
Moreover, the event had a profound influence on public perceptions of civil liberties, particularly the rights of free speech, assembly, and a fair trial. It raised critical questions about justice, the role of law enforcement, and the treatment of dissent in American society.
In the years that followed, May Day was adopted by labor movements around the world as International Workers' Day, in commemoration of the Haymarket Affair and as a continuing call for workers' rights and social justice.
As we reflect on the Haymarket Massacre, we're reminded of the ongoing struggle for workers' rights and the importance of standing up for what's right.
Absolutely, Marco. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, follow, and share the History AI podcast.
And we'd love to hear from you. Suggest topics through our social media channels. Your input is invaluable to us.
Until next time, keep exploring history with us. Goodbye, and stay curious.
Goodbye, everyone.
Step into the thrilling world of sports betting with The Starting Line, an introduction to sports betting. Whether you're a beginner or simply curious, this comprehensive guide takes you from the basics to the advanced. Learn to decode odds, develop winning strategies, and bet responsibly. Get your copy now and transform every game into an adventure. The Starting Line is your first step towards mastering the art of sports betting. Available on Amazon.